the thing I remember her saying, I don't know if she ever did say anything directly to me about Strike. I think the thing she said to the script people, the writers and the editors, was he's never self-pitying, which was a really helpful thing to just have at the forefront of my mind when there is a lot of him on the receiving end of quite a lot of, crap. So that was just really good to just always have in my mind. I don't think she could have said anything more helpful than that, actually.
What do you think makes him a good detective, and what does he see in Robin that makes her a good detective?
I mean, he's a very good worker, and he's good at his craft, and he's then very intuitive on top of that, and it's not dissimilar what he sees in her. I was quite interested at when he's not such a good detective, so he's very good at figuring out who's done it, but maybe not quite the type of killer he thinks they are. So I thought that was an interesting thing, that there's and it's often to do with him thinking better of somebody, even a murderer. Thinking that there's enough of a human being inside them that if he sits down with them and says, "Look, I know what you've done," that they might almost be relieved, and that he's almost like a big brother in that moment. And they very rarely react the way he thinks they're going to.
Tell us a bit about walking, getting the hang of walking. I know you talked on set about the difficulty of appearing to run with the thesis. Tell us a bit about the work you did to...
Yeah, I mean, the reason I mentioned that was it was to a degree it was guesswork, because I had a leg as the character that you would only run on if your life depended on it, or somebody you love's life depended on it, and you would be in agony. And obviously I'm not going to turn to Mark or Barney, who Mark's my double and Barney's there to advise, and they both have the same condition. I'm not going to turn to them and say, "Can you run down the street so I can watch you in agony?" And obviously it's not agony for me, because I don't have that condition. So that was a bit of guesswork, and yeah. Then things like walking was much more simple, because I was watching. I spent a whole day with Barney and Toby Sedgwick, who's a movement director, very brilliant movement director and a very brilliant actor actually, and we just sort of broke it down into everything that was visible to the human eye, and not a lot is when it's that exact thing, because it's below the knee joint. You've still got a functioning knee joint. It's tiny things, really. I mean, the fact you're wearing a very tight elastine sock to give you some sort of comfort in the leg just means that kneecap is moving minimally slower than the other one. And so I was just trying to basically get in the rhythm of that, and then not overthink it.
So we understand that you've been involved with the Soldiers Charity.
Yeah. So
have you learned anything in particular about veteran struggles through your involvement with that, as well as playing Strike?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly aware that it's something that one shouldn't lose. That we all need to, focus needs to be maintained. But it was very interesting talking to Mark and Barney. Mark is not an ex-army person. He lost the bottom half of his lower leg in an accident. Barney lost it in the army on service, and went into a hospital where he was surrounded by other soldiers, and thrived in that atmosphere, which was what he described as being actually quite competitive, like who was doing better. And I thought that the sort of camaraderie of that was quite fascinating, and I'm sure one could learn a lot from that in terms of how other people are dealing with because I think Mark felt much more isolated, just being in a hospital with other people who maybe had the same condition but didn't have the same sort of life.
What do you think makes this unique from other detective series?
I think tonally it's incredibly varied, and I think the books are incredibly varied. And I think that was something we really didn't want to lose. And sometimes there's a tendency in television to, if not paint every episode with one tone, to kind of paint each scene with one tone, and to actually find moments where something can have an abrupt turn from, at the most extreme end, sort of comedy to tragedy. Tragedy is the wrong word, but something go from being quite dark to quite absurd, or quite absurd to quite moving. I feel like this allowed for that in a really good way, and I feel like we achieved that.
The second book's pretty gory. What was it like when you went onto the set and saw that laid out?
It was amazing, and then they were immediately saying, "Can you hold the phone so we can't see the, intestine, or not the intestines are gone, but the worst bit." So we were already kind of pulling back a bit from what was actually there in front of us. It was a bizarre sort of thing, because it was the most horrific thing to look at, but it was also in one of those amazing artist studio flats in Golgotha Road, which I've always wanted to go in. Yeah.
Since Strike is ex-military, I know that you have a history of playing military types on TV, Musketeers and more of these. Did you find yourself pulling in any of that mindset for this role?
It was quite an abrupt turn in my career. I was playing lots of consumptive poets and artists, and then suddenly it was soldiers. I don't know. I suppose not really consciously, but I do think about those people and what they do, and what we ask of them a lot.
What intrigues him about the particular cases? Because you said the first one and the second one are particularly incredibly different. What is there that attracts him to each case?
Well, to be honest, quite often it's money. I mean, he's not doing that well off, particularly in the first book, and he's almost sort of not bullied into it, but the John who comes to him and asks him to investigate, he's pulling on all sorts of, you were a friend of our family, etc., etc. And it's quite often a very slow dawning that actually there might be something rotten in the state of Denmark, and that things need to be, thoroughly investigated. But I think initially it's like, this is another gig, I think what you feel is, so strongly in the books, is, and I don't know that it's autobiographical necessarily, but it dives into these worlds of the fashion industry and fame and publishing, and you do feel those are worlds that have been very thoroughly explored by Joe, and there's a very strong reaction to elements in them.
Did you find any of those issues in particular especially interesting, like the fashion industry or the nature of fame and those types of themes that are explored?
Yeah, I do find, fame does interest me as a thing, and it's something that I was being asked about a lot recently, and I didn't want to say, oh, it's like really boring, and I didn't want to say, I love it. And the closest I could get was to say it's rather like when you're a kid and you steal a sweet from a shop. You kind of feel excited, but you kind of feel like you've done something wrong. And that's kind of how I feel about fame. I don't know what I've done wrong, but that's the feeling.
Did you have a particular book or arc of the three that you liked better than the others, or?
And I don't know how much it was to do with. Career of Evil was kind of easier in a way, because they're immediately plunged into danger in a way that they're at a slight distance from, and the others, at least initially. and Career of Evil, the last book literally starts with, you know, something fairly gruesome being left on their doorstep, and so that was just easier to act because the stakes have very immediate context, and that then had an effect on everything that was going on with the Robin Strike relationship. So I suppose for all those reasons, that one.
What do you think about that relationship? How do you?
I think he's spent his life again and again coming up against people whose egos have kind of atrophied to the point where they've essentially, you know, done something evil. And Robin walks in and is the polar opposite of an atrophied ego. She's the most sort of generous, caring, giving, insightful human being, and she's, of course, the perfect woman for it, but it's a total blind spot because it's absolutely not the right moment, and it's inconvenient in all sorts of ways. I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying, I mean, nothing really happens in the books up to now, but I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that. I think that is palpable. I think that is something that people really enjoy in the books, is watching them navigate this blind spot they both have.
Do you think he's in love with her?
Well, I mean, the line, and I'm going to get the line wrong, but the line that I found most helpful was there's a line I think in Career of Evil where her wedding gets put off, and Joe had written something like, and it's very much written as a thought he has, you know, he thought, better than this, he thought there's still time, but he didn't know what he meant by that. Like, it could be still time with their work relationship, it could be still time with, but you know, I think the thing was, you know, you sort of, I think we think like people in a George Eliot novel where everything is very ordered and you know what's going on, and I don't think we do, and I think Joe manages to write that sort of delusion or mystery that one can be in, or just not even delusion, just sort of blindness that one can have about something. And I think she writes it about the relationship between them in a really great way. And when I read that, it sort of just answered all the questions for me about what was going on in the first two books. I thought, there's something there, but, you know.
So what did you find most challenging about this role?
Well, I suppose you want to get things right, like the minutiae of the condition he's in, and that can grate on your mind. I mean, there's only so much you can do and think about it before you just drive yourself nuts, you know. I suppose that was the challenge. I mean, the challenge with me is always just getting on with it and not overthinking things.
So you found it to be somewhat of a natural role for you?
Yeah, I did. I felt the more it went on, the more I felt I was putting myself into it, and I couldn't tell you what that was, but I just, you know, I suppose also when you read a book, you're confronted with the silhouette of somebody and the exterior of somebody. It's a very different way in than when you're just reading lines on a page and you're immediately kind of saying them in your head. You get this whole shape of this thing and you think, oh, I've got to be that, and I've got to fill that, and I've got to... And so it was... and then I did quite early on, I just thought, oh, I can also just kind of bring myself to this too. It's just, I don't know, probably because it's a novel, it just happens a different way around. Yeah.
It's daunting playing someone that the fans are so passionate about. They're waiting to see Strike on screen.
It is, but again, I mean, I think the great thing was I didn't have time to think about this. I mean, I just didn't. I mean, there was a period of time after getting the job before starting, but, you know, I was nicely busy. When we started, I just very quickly realised I had to put so much trust into the people I was working with, into the directors, which doesn't always happen. You know, sometimes there's a real... and things are still there to be negotiated, but at the end of the day, you got to do what you do in the time you got to do it. And I think me and Holly just had to just hand over to each other and to the directors, and that was really liberating. There wasn't any room to micromanage what one was doing.
Holly was telling me she loved driving around in the Jeep. How was
Oh
that?
yeah, no, I liked that too. Yeah, we ate a lot of toffee there. Yeah, there was a sort of scene with a toffee, but I think we shot it there, and we got through about 2 bags of toffee, so it was quite wired. But she was amazing driving. I mean, I was like, she just was handling. I mean, because that's just a tough thing to. And I'm not saying women drivers. I'm saying I would find it hard. Just in case that's. Old kind of gear sticks, and she was just absolutely amazing.
Is there something in particular you really enjoyed filming?
All of it. I know I felt very happy. It was a very nice atmosphere on set. Everybody was. You felt like everybody was covering everyone else, because there was so much. It's easy to forget one thing, and people only do that if they get on.
Was it quite nice shooting in London as well?
Oh, it was really nice shooting in London. I mean, Fitzrovia, I loved the quietness of Fitzrovia and then the busyness of Soho, and to be able to be sort of traversing all those different bits was just lovely. And also for me to kind of reconnect to London, because I've been away a lot with work, and I absolutely knew where everything was in London a few years ago, and then I suddenly, when I got back last year, was going, oh yeah, and it was just lovely to just rediscover all that.
Are there any guest stars you particularly enjoyed working with? Because there's all different guest stars in each one.
I mean, Leo Bill is a great friend, and it was lovely to work with him finally. Leah Williams, Monica Dolan, Peter Sullivan, Tim McInerney, a lot of very young people who were sort of just out of drama school who were fantastic. I don't want to say one person because they were kind of all great. At risk of sounding sorry, like
So prior to this, were you particularly drawn to the mystery or crime genre at all personally?
Yeah, no, I was. I mean, I've got a massive soft spot for Joan Hickson's Miss Marple, which my friend Jason referred to as a piece of accidental genius. I was still trying to figure out what he meant by that. I think I know what he meant. I think she is just amazing. I just could watch her in that forever. It's just so light and perfect and detailed. Quite dark when she becomes the sort of avenging angel at the end. But yeah, all sorts of stuff. The more serialised stuff and the sort of more whodunit this week stuff. Yeah, I've always enjoyed it.